Chapter 18, Logic. When I got back to my table in the library, Stephen pounced on me. What happened? What'd she say? Are you in trouble? Not too much, I said, but she got pretty mad. And she wants to put me in the gifted program right away. What else? He asked. What about the tests and everything? I shook my head. I'll tell you about it on the bus, okay? I need to finish this reading. That wasn't exactly true. What I really needed was time to think, because I could see where all this was going, but I couldn't tell where it would end. The plan Stephen and I had made had sounded good when we were talking about it, and it had been kind of fun to be a show-off genius one day and then get 3 zeros the next. But something Mrs. Hackney had said really got me. She had said, "You have upset all your teachers." And that got me thinking, if they were all upset now, how were they going to feel if we really got the school stirred up? Because that was probably going to happen. Our plan was to get as many kids as we could to start getting zeros. Tests, quizzes, homework, zeros on everything. I was just the leader, the test case. Stephen was pretty sure that Lee, Ben, Kevin, and James would go along, and he thought he could sell the idea to the little brother and some of his friends in 4th grade, too. I thought if I explained everything just right, a bunch of girls would join in. And that would get a whole gang of parents involved, because all our parents are worried about grades all the time. I mean, most of our parents were already worrying about which colleges we would get into. So if a lot of kids started getting zeros on everything, it would be a big deal. The story would probably get into the newspaper and would get into local TV for sure, because all the school meetings were broadcast on cable. So pretty soon, the whole town would know about all the bad grades. But Stephen and I weren't planning to stop with zeros on some tests and quizzes, because once people started paying attention, we were going to tell everyone that we wanted all the kids in Philbrook to get zeros on the mastery tests too. If all the schools in Philbrook suddenly got rotten scores on the CMT, that would be major news, because if the schools get bad CMT scores, then the whole town gets a bad reputation. My mom's a realtor, and I've heard her say that if a town gets bad scores, then fewer people want to buy houses there. Bad scores mean that the principals and the teachers get in trouble, and then the State Board of Education gets involved, and on and on and on. Because those CMT scores are a huge deal, and since the kids are the ones who actually sit down and take the tests, the kids control the scores. That meant that the kids had all this power, and then they didn't even know about it. Stephen and I were ready to change all that. It was going to be like when all the teachers organized a strike and stopped working until they got paid more. We were going to organize a kids' strike, a strike against grades and tests and pressure and bad competition. As I sat there thinking, I could see all of that happening step by step. In 3 or 4 weeks, our whole school would be turned upside down. Kids would be getting zeros on tests. Teachers would be mad at the kids. Parents would be mad at their kids, and the teachers, and the principal. And the school board would be mad at everybody. And they would all be mad at me and at Stephen. So that's why I needed to stop now and think. I looked around the library. At the next table, Melanie Neeson was reading a teen romance book. She wasn't worried about her grades. She was wondering whether Roger would ever ask Susan to the big dance. Behind me, 2 4th grade boys were arguing about the best way to display their projects at the science fair. They were laughing and goofing around, and they were learning too. But they didn't even know it. They weren't competing or thinking about grades. Over in the corner sat the magazine rack. 3 girls were flopped on beanbag chairs. their heads close together, giggling about something. School was a fun place for them. Any pressure? Not today. At the other end of my table, Stephen was chewing on the end of his pencil and making faces at his math homework. Was Stephen desperately unhappy about school? No. Did he actually believe he was dumb, like permanently stupid? No. And why had Stephen gotten involved with the crazy plan that might shake up the whole town of Philbrook? Did he do it because he had a deep desire to change education in the state of Connecticut? No. He did it for me. Plus, it sounded like an adventure with a little danger and excitement. Next fall, when it was time for all the teachers to get the kids cranked up for the CMT again, would all the kids get stressed out for a month or so? Yes, absolutely. But then the testing would be over and all the kids would get on with their lives. They would laugh and talk to their friends. They would do their homework. Their teachers would teach them. They would take their tests and quizzes, and the time would go by. Then they would move on to the next grade, and the next, and the next. Fact. I was the only kid in the whole school worrying this way about grades and tests and competition. All the other kids were being normal. And I had to face that fact too. I was not a normal kid. I had a gift. That's what Mrs. Hackney called it. Some gift. I got up and started walking toward the circulation desk. Mrs. Burns saw me coming and she didn't look too happy about it, but I needed to talk. I said, "Hi, Mrs. Byrne." Mrs. Byrne smiled. "Hello, Nora. You look a little down. Hard day?" I nodded and said, "Yeah." "Did you hear anything?" "Oh, yes. It was headline news. Star student bombs 3 tests. Pretty dramatic." She looked into my face and said, "Is everything working out the way you wanted it to?" I don't know." And I felt like such a baby because I could feel tears at the corner of my eyes. Mrs. Byrne pretended not to notice. She looked down at her keyboard and then at the screen in front of her. She said, "I've been wondering about something, Nora. I hope you don't think I'm being nosy, but I'm very curious. It's a simple question. Why do you think you're so smart?" I took a swipe at my eyes and gave a shrug. "Genetics, I guess. That's what they say if you got a supercharged mind." Mrs. Burns shook her head. "I don't mean where did you get the intelligence from. I mean, why do you think you have it?" She paused a second and then said, "Think of it this way. Do you believe that things happen for a reason?" I said, "Yes. At least I think that's true." Mrs. Burns said, "So if things happen for a reason, then there must be a reason that you've been given so much intelligence, right?" I nodded, and she said, "So that's what I'm asking. Why do you think you're so smart?" I've always felt like I could understand things instantly. Whenever a question came along, all I had to do was think, and zip, the answer was right there. No busy signal, no waiting. This question was different. I was thinking hard, but I got nothing. I said, "I don't know. I have no idea why I'm this smart. And if I don't know the answer, then maybe I'm not as bright as I think I am. Is that it? Is that what you mean?" Mrs. Burns smiled again and shook her head. "I'm not saying that. I think you're every bit as intelligent as the evidence suggests, and then some. It's just that I've met all kinds of kids with all sorts of amazing talents. And for me, the big question has always been, why? And then usually much later, I begin to learn the answer. I get to see what they do with their lives. It's interesting, don't you think?" I nodded. Mrs. Burns said, "So tell me, what comes next for you, Nora? You certainly have gotten everyone's attention. So what's next?" Yesterday, I would have been able to answer that question. I'd have said, "Just you wait. Stephen and me, we've got big plans. Watch out for a lot of action and all sorts of fireworks, and plenty of loud noises. But I didn't feel that way anymore. So I said, I'm not sure. There are too many variables. Something's kind of weird now. Mrs. Burns said. I wish I could tell you what to do, Nora, but I can't. I can tell you this, though. Of all the possible things we can do at any moment, one is usually better than the rest. So that's the one to look out for. All you ever have to do is the next good thing. Make sense? I smiled and said, very logical. Sounds like something a librarian would say. That got a laugh out of her. Mrs. Burns said, well, I think it's true all the same. I know you can figure this out, and I'll be watching to see how you do. I said, that'll make two of us, plus every other kid and teacher in the school. The speaker below the clock let out a long bell tone. I said, see you Monday, Mrs. Byrne. And she said, have a nice weekend, Nora. I went back to my table and got my things ready for the bus ride home. Mrs. Byrne hadn't given me any answers, but she hadn't solved any of my problems. In fact, now I had more questions than I'd talked to her. Even so, I felt better, which wasn't logical. Because the fact is, logic only works up to a certain point. Beyond that point, it makes a different kind of thinking, more like listening and watching. That was what I needed to do. I needed to listen and watch. I needed to be on the lookout for that next good thing. And if I spotted the next good thing, then it would come the hard part, because then I'd have to do it.